Here's a Red River Dave song. Here sitting thinking Dixie cotton fields and whippoorwill, where I spent my happy childhood among the rocks and among the rill. I can see my pa and mother as around the farm they go, to my farm in Louisiana where the old Red River flows. Ideal lady, you can hear the old folks singing soft and low, and at twilight in the evening, so low, on my farm in Louisiana where the old Red River flows. The nights are bright on Broadway and the city's bright and gay. On the beach at Coney Island you can hear all the people say, I'm headed for the Southland where the icy winds don't blow, to my farm in Louisiana where the old Red River flows. Ideal lady, you can hear the old folks singing soft and low, and at twilight in the evening, so low, on the farm in Louisiana where the old Red River flows. Yeah. Ideal lady, you can hear the old folks singing soft and low, and at twilight in the evening, so low, on the farm in Louisiana where the old Red River flows. On the farm in Louisiana where the old Red River flows. Thank you. I had to do it. I've got an attack of the gout going on. So I figured I'd have to try to yodel so you wouldn't know I was screaming in agony. If you were sitting up there saying, that sounds like that boy screaming in agony. That's exactly right. Here's an Everly Brothers tune. Darling, you can count on me till the sun dries up the sea. Until then, I'll always be devoted to you. I'll love you through endless time. I'll adore your charms sublime. Guess by now you know that I'm devoted to you. I'll never hurt you, I'll never cry, I'll never be untrue. I'll never give you reason to cry. I'd be unhappy if you were blue through the years my love will grow. Like a river it will flow. It can't die because I'm so devoted to you. I'll never hurt you, I'll never lie, I'll never be untrue. I'll never give you reason to cry. I'd be unhappy if you were blue. Through the years my love will grow. Like a river it will flow. It can't die because I'm so devoted to you. I have a new novel coming out. Woohoo! Yeah, I know. Thank you. I wrote it about 30 years ago, and I got hooked up with a big-time New York agent who thought it was brilliant, and tried to get it published and failed utterly. I got all kinds of beautiful letters from like the vice president at Random House saying, "This is a very interesting novel," but no thanks. And in part because I took this art class from Artful Aging, and you know, before I learned about these programs at the library, I was aging. You know, I was a lonely, depressed, fat, gouty old man, and I took a course. It's the first art course I had ever taken in all my life, and it was good. It was tough. The people in it were great. We worked together constantly. Some of my friends here were in that course, and it changed my life. I'm now a fat, gouty, old, creative, published. Yeah. So if you want to give a little money to the library to help this out, it really does make a difference. And these are not basket weaving courses. These are not, you know, keep the old folks busy courses. These are tough, real art classes, and I'm doing some stuff still, you know, because I took those courses, and so I really can't tell you how good that's been and how good it is for this community. Anyways, I have this novel coming out. I picked it up and sent it out again. I taught in colleges for years and years and years, and I found one of my students who'd gotten her novel published by this independent publisher out of Tampa called, appropriately enough, Down and Out Books. And she was doing real good. She'd won some awards, and the publisher had won some awards. And so I said to her, her name is Jen Conley, she has a new novel coming out. And I said, "Would you like to look at my novel?" And she said, "Sure." So I sent it to her, and she read it and liked it, and sent it to the publisher, and he liked it, and phew, it's coming out this year. Yeah. And there's another one coming out next year. And I've seen the cover of this one, and it looks great. I mean, it looks like a real novel, you know. So I'm going to read a little piece of this. This is this novel takes place here in this area in the 1920s, and I did a lot of research to make sure I'd be right about what I was saying culturally and all of that. And my dad here, who will be 102 in August. He helped me out a lot with a lot of information, and his older sister, who will be 110 in December, yes, I know. I'm not going to survive a gout attack. But she helped me a lot. I got a lot of detail. There's some detail in here about the switch over from a Model T to a Model A, and how with the Model Ts down here, because they had a gravity-fed gas tank, if you were going up one of these hills, you had to turn around backwards and go up back. It's true. And the Model A's had a fuel pump on them, so you'll see that in here. Anyways, this is about a character named Hawkeye, who's kind of the Greek chorus in the novel. He's one of these guys, you know people like this, who grew up in this area and know everybody, and everybody knows them, and he tells all the stories. And he's a muskrat trapper in the Holston River. And so, here, I'll read you a little piece of this. I hope you like it. Hawkeye, that's his name. Hawkeye listened to his own legs splashing in the shallow water. He was getting chilled, his fingers stiffening and beginning to burn in the frosted air, and the water felt warm now when he submerged his hands again. It's cold as hell yet on my feet, and it's warmer than a hog's blood on my darn fingers, he thought. He was having some difficulty getting the clumsy trap to lie right in the water, so's a rat ain't a-going to draw it up on the bank, leave me nothing but luck. He'd caught more than a few three-footed muskrats in his life, creatures that had escaped once, dragging traps up onto the land. There they could gain a purchase and slash through their own flesh, snapping off the trapped bones at the joint and severing the paw with one or two harsh, clenched closings of those powerful jaws. And so, Hawkeye found a slanted rock 4 inches below the surface where the trap would settle and remain until the muskrat would spring it, and animal and trap would collaborate to pull themselves off the rock and into deeper water. He wouldn't have admitted it, but he took a certain comfort in knowing that a good set meant the animal would pull the trap over on top of itself, and this would hasten the drowning. Do it right, she don't suffer much. He notched the trap jaws, having to spring back suddenly when his hand slipped and the teeth stitched shut, throwing up a little explosion of silvered water. He cursed, but went smoothly and methodically back to work, getting it hung this time and settling it onto the rock. It was getting on toward dark when he dragged his splashing feet from the water, stepping tentatively on the nubbins of cold flesh and bone, blowing on his fiery hands. He could smell his own cotton-wet dampness rising up from below to mix with the leaf-sharp twilight. I don't reckon I'd do this for fun, he said. Hawkeye had actually eaten muskrat only once when he drove Pastor Durden up the mountain to officiate at a wedding, and had been served up a hefty slab of the stuff for the celebratory dinner. The meat was deep brown, redolent, and glistening, shipperin', he called it later, with grease. We got into that new A-model flatbed of mine to go on up there. I remember because preacher said he reckoned now we mate could drive the straight and narrow like God intended and weren't a-going to have to go backwards all the way up the mountain, taking turns kind of standing on the reverse pedal while the other in rubbernecks to see where we's a-going. Well, I was a mite discomforted when Preacher Darden first climbed in because I'd kindly left a 2-quart jar of corn a-setting right out there on the seat to his side. I'd plumb forgot to tuck her away, and there she was, right out in the open for Preacher to look at. Well, he didn't seem to take no mattering about it. I kindly says, I'm dreadful sorry, Pastor. I know I oughtn't to have had this liquor, and I reckon I'd just pour it out if I thought it mayn't do me any good. But I reckon I can't do nothing about it now but to beg your forgiveness. Well now, Brother Hog-Eye, he says. That's just what he says. Brother Hog-Eye, can you beat that? Well, Brother Hog-Eye, he says, I don't believe God spends too much of his time worrying about if a feller takes a sup of corn now and again. A feller that works hard and goes to church and makes up his tithe and all. It ain't a-going to matter none in the eyes of the Lord if he sups a mite now and then. So then I thinks, he may be a-wanting a mite of this here corn himself. Wouldn't be the first preacher ever did, I'd say that. So I kindly just nudges that fruit jar a half an inch in his direction, like show him he can snuff a mite if he wants. But he says, no, thank you, Brother Hog-Eye. Don't that just kill you, that Brother Hog-Eye? No, he says, it wouldn't do for me to compromise my calling as a man of the cloth, not right before the wedding, kindly just on up the mountain. But I thank you, and don't you worry none about that corn and the Lord. You want to take a sup once in a while after a hard day. Well, he was a right nice old feller. Never the kind of preacher that may get real hard on a fella for any old thing. He always was pert sensible for a man of the cloth. So I tucked that jar away under the seat and stopped worrying about it and got that A-model crunk, and off we went to the wedding, away yonder across Johnson City and up them big mountains off Irvin, way up in the laurel thickets and all, up to Odin's Cove. I mean, we was plumb out from town, I'll tell you. Well, now I come from mountain folks just over to Shelton's, so I weren't too surprised at anything. And these was mountain folks, I'd say. The groom was a big old boy, raw-boned, with a snatch of hair standing right up on end like it was kindly a pointing the way home. And the gal was about 12-year-old with a hair lip, looked like they done stitched it up in the shed sometime between cutting and grading. The both of them was likely wearing something on their feet besides mud for the first time in their lives. But it don't matter. Them is good folks, I'll tell you. Treated us like we was Abraham and Isaac and the Hebrew children all rolled into one. Them Cove folks will give you every damn thing they got if they think you even possibly may like to have it. They ain't got nothing, but they'll be tickled pink if they can get to watch you eat their last chicken and feed you that little slab of ham they was saving for their Sunday. So you can bet, this being the big wedding and all that, well, they was kindly a-fixin' to set out the best thing they had on the whole damn ranch. So preacher done the wedding and everybody said how happy they all was. Then we all sat down for the big wedding dinner. And here comes Ma a-toting a big old platter full up with roasted muskrats. There weren't no doubt at all about what they was, because they still kindly looked like muskrats, you know, and ain't nothing looks like a skun muskrat but a skun muskrat, you know. Well, it smelled so bad, I like to huckle right on the spot. Now, I don't reckon all muskrat cooks up a smelling that bad. I reckon these folks had done nailed these out on a board in the sun and forgot about them until it was next month or so. Whatever it was, it kindly done the trick, I tell you. Phew-wee, it done the trick. Weren't much doubt, but that was rankled meat. I kindly snuck a look at the Reverend, kindly trying to talk to him with my eyes, you know, like trying to say, you reckon this here meat'll kill us in an hour or two, or is we going to have to suffer overnight? Well, there weren't no question we had to eat it. Them poor folks would have been purely shamed if we'd not eat their best meat. Here they had done fixed up their big wedding supper and had made us to sit right at the head of the plank, right next to the bride and groom. And they'd done put out salt rising bread and a big bowl of soup beans and all, and that big old platter of meat. They must have been 6 or 7 muskrat corpses lying on that trencher. At least from counting the legs, you could see poking up here and there. All of it kindly shippering around in the grease. So there weren't nothing for it but to eat the stuff. what with Grandma and Grandpa and Aunt Hoojigger, and all was sitting there looking at us like they just done give us the prize bull. But I tell you, it scared me to put any of that into my mouth. I seen one or two folks got into bad meat, and it weren't no candy pulling, I'll tell you. So they's all gazing up the plank at Pastor Durden with that meat steaming up into the whole room. And Pa asked Pastor, would you honor us by giving the blessing? So the preacher gets himself up right slow, kind of eyeing that big old platter like it was a rattlesnake or something. And he says, "Dear God." "Dear God," he says, "we thank you for bringing together all this here family for to witness to the joyful union of young Hoojigger and this dear girl. And we ask you to bless this here food that we are a-fixin' to receive. We ask you to bless this here food real good. For Jesus' sake, watch over them that's about to eat this here bounty with your most tender mercy and care. Keep all us folks safe in thy healing power. And Lord, forgive us anything we may have done to provoke your wrath. Dear God, for Christ's sake. Amen." And he sat right down, and they fotched us each up a great big old hunk of that muskrat. And I tell you, it had to have been sitting out in the hot sun for a month, or maybe it had lied in that trap in the swamp water for 6 weeks before anybody remembered that it was what we was going to eat at the big wedding supper. So run down and fotch it back up here this morning. And preacher, he tucked right into her, shoveling down great forkfuls of that stuff, just a golloping it down without hardly chewing on it, kind of like a hound dog would, like he couldn't eat it fast enough. And about pert near every 4 bites, he mumbles out, "Delicious," or "That's some fine eating, ma'am," and right back to the fork he goes. And they was right tickled to see how much he was enjoying his muskrat meat. You could see it made them all happier than Billy in the low ground, and so they grabbed another big old glob of that meat and dropped it on his plate, and he went after it the same way, like he just couldn't get enough of it. Well, I reckon that's what makes him a preacher, ain't it? Me, I'd gouge me off a little glibber of that meat, and I'd grab 2 fat pieces of that salt raisin bread and kindly wrop them around my piece of muskrat, and I'd dip it in the bean liquor. And even then you couldn't taste nothing but critter. And that grease that kind of stuck to your tongue and all around inside your mouth and your gullet, it really was the awfulest thing I ever put within a half a mile of my teeth. I will tell you that. "He sure likes that salt rising bread, don't he?" Grandma says, happy as hell, and starts to pushing what's probably their last loaf at me, which was just fine and dandy with me under the circumstances. They're all sitting there eating down their muskrat like it's a pheasant on a half shell or what have you. Best food anybody'd ever dreamed of. And down to our end, there's Pastor Durden shoving that stuff in his mouth, bobbing his head up and down, and a mumbling, "Delicious," every 22 seconds. So you ask me if I've ever eaten muskrat, I got to say I have. Now, tell you the truth, I'm right certain it was bad muskrat. It was kindly clabbered, and that's a surety. So I ain't never eat any good muskrat, even there is any such thing to speak of. Well, now, we finally got out in that place after we done shook everybody's hand 15 or 20 times and congratulated the happy couple and all that. We made it out into the truck, and I didn't give a damn about ceremony, nor preacher, nor nothing. I just kindly slid that fruit jar out from under the seat, rasted her open, and poured a batch down, kindly sloshing it around to scourge that grease out in my mouth if it was at all possible. And I handed the jar to the preacher. I weren't rightly sure I should, but I figured we was most likely both are going to be dead in a few minutes, so it weren't going to matter much one way or the other. And anyways, he done snatched it from me like it was the book of Revelation. After a minute, I kindly looked over at him. "Tell me, preacher," I says, flat out, "did you really like that meat yonder that you was shoveling down your throat like lye down the sump hole, and tell them how delicious it was? Was you actually telling them the truth about how you liked it?" "Oh, yes, sir," he says. "I couldn't lie to them kind folks. I liked it. I did." Then he turned up that jar of white liquor and took 3 great big old swallers. 1, 2, 3, just like that. "Oh," he says, "I couldn't lie to them." And he lets out an enormous gurgling belch, like a heifer with the glanders. "I liked it, sure enough." And he starts to hand me back the jar. Then he stops and kindly looks down into it. "But I tell you one thing, Brother Hall-Guy," he says, and he takes another pretty fair pull on that moonshine. "I didn't like it very goddamn much." I'm about out of time, but I'll do one more song just to get the grease out of your mouth. That's based on a true story. Everything in this novel is based on a true story. You wouldn't believe it around here, would you? Yeah, right. Now, let's see, what should I do? All right, let's do that. Mississippi John Hurt. Put on the skillet, put on the lead. Man is gonna make a little shortening bread. After that, there's a treat for you. Man is gonna make a little coffee too. Little baby like shortening, shortening. Man, little baby like shortening. Shortening, shortening. Man, little baby likes. Lying in bed, one is sick and the other most dead. Called the doctor said, give them babies little shortening bread. Shortening, shortening, man, little baby like shortening bread. Shortening, shortening, man, little baby like shortening bread. Shortening, man, the little baby like shortening bread. Shortening, shortening.